This is the Math Map Book Club, where ordinary parents encourage one another to develop an extraordinary appreciation of math. We love what we know and struggle over the unfamiliar. Through weekly conversation and exploration among friends, we can begin to enjoy ideas that seem difficult. Join our book club as we discover how math helps us to know God and to make Him known. So welcome to the Math Map Book Club. I thought I should start saying the date first because I keep forgetting it. So it's Wednesday, July 23rd, 2025. And this is where Kirsty Gilpin and I each week discuss the Math Map curriculum used by Classical Conversations communities. And we are finishing off our summer series looking at games, and we'll be moving into the regular rhythm of the school year in a couple weeks. So, or is it even next week? What are you doing, Kirsty? Take over now.
It is indeed. So this is our last of our summer series of the book club. And you should be seeing my screen now. And we are going to be talking about the activities from the backs of lessons 29 and 30, Create Your Own Game and Spirograph. And next week, we will be doing our 25-26 academic year kickoff. And so we will be starting with lesson 1 next week and then proceeding each week with a brief hiatus of that progression during the Christmas holiday. So we are excited because we're going to be talking about what might this look like at home starting next week. And we know that there's almost an infinite number of ways that this could look in your homeschool. And so we don't want to say, here's the answers for everybody, but we want to give you some strategies for using the math map with different ages, and especially if you have multiple ages around the same family table. So again, this is our last week. We have been going through 2 booklets a week, looking at those games and activities on the backs of the lesson booklets. We have had Jill and Babs here helping us to lead through those. And I know that that's been a blessing to hear their experience as really working with this for many, many years now. As pilots, they've seen many iterations and they really bring a lot of wisdom when they share with us. And so we're so grateful for both of them. And this week, we're going to find that there really weren't any published instructions. So we're going to be talking about what does that look like when you look at these activities. And then, of course, we'll have time for questions and answers at the end. And so without any further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Jill. And Jill is going to help us think through how do we help our students to create a game for themselves in our lesson 29, Seeing the Unseen booklet.
Well, thank you so much, Kirsty, for reminding us all that there are no instructions. And so that makes us have to think about what do we know, right? At first, when I was thinking about this week, I was like, oh, I can bring these ideas, I can bring these examples. And thankfully, Babs and Kirsty and I meet each week and talk about what things would be helpful to add into the call, and if Babs or I have any questions, then we get a chance to hear straight from Kirsty and see what kinds of answers she has, help she can give us. Sometimes talking us down a little bit off a ledge, sometimes helping us add more to a skeleton that we've started with, or even saying how excited she is too. So, when we talked about this particular book activity, Kirsty really helped me because she reminded me that I don't have to provide a game, that the activity is for the students to provide a game. And so, what we are talking about is how to help our students create a game, not what are some examples of games. We've been playing games all summer, and we've done lots of adaptations of games. So we understand that. But if we think about teaching our children something or walking our children through an activity that starts with a blank page, where else in their education do they start with a blank page? So this can be a conversation. So where do they start with a blank page?
Well, that's the way we do assessment.
Yes, we do assessment starting with a blank page.
Starting to write a paper?
Yes, learning to write a paper, blank page, right? So, what do we use when we're going to start from a blank page? What tools, what classical tools do we have that help us begin from a blank page?
How about the five common topics of invention?
Yes, we have the five common topics. So, one of the first ones there would be definition. So, we can ask our students, what is a game? Right? And so, what would you say are the parts of a game? What makes a game a game?
I think you have to have competition. Now, I know that not everybody thinks that. Not everybody says you should have to have a competition, but I like competition. And so I would say that should be part of your game is having a competition. But I guess the opposite would be not having a competition. So I guess it could be either or.
Right. So those are things we need to include in our definition and maybe compare. Do what does competition? What is a game with or without competition? Is it still a game? Oh, thank you for scribing there. Any other thoughts on what else makes a game a game?
There are some games that we play that are cooperative games. So you have a goal, and the whole team together either achieves the goal or fails at the goal.
Yes,
So it could be
exactly.
not competition, it could be cooperation as well.
Yes, it could be a cooperation game. Yeah. And that might require one person to kind of think through more of the game, you know, or it could just be a bunch of kids who cooperatively decide what their goal is going to be and work toward achieving it. But it could be almost escape roomish, where the parent or the tutor, the whoever's leading has some things they'd like to achieve along the way. What else makes a game a game?
So
So when you
whether
ask,
it's collaborative or competitive, it still has a goal, right? You're trying to
Yes.
achieve something, a goal
Yes.
in mind
A
to come
goal.
back to some end, or would you call it a conclusion, or would it be an end or a
Sure.
goal?
And then that reminds us of the five core habits and storytelling. That a story
Mm.
that really doesn't have a conclusion or a point or a theme or a goal can feel, a little bit like a letdown. So the storytelling aspect of a game can be part of it.
well, I was just thinking, so you could have a goal to begin with, or you could discover what your goal is. Like when you said, what are the parts of a game? I was thinking we use manipulatives a lot. We use like cards or dice or whatever it might be. We could just pull out a bunch of things like that, and they could make up a game.
Yes,
And then we discover
exactly.
what the goal, what the purpose, what the goal of the game would be as they're
Yes, very
creating.
true. Very true. And they might need to play around with that to discover what their goal is and then later be able to share what that game
Mhm.
is once they've kind of worked it out as with peers.
Right.
So I was thinking of something as Jana was talking. I don't know if this is part of definition. I think it is, but you guys tell me. I feel like there needs to be some games that have a winner and some games that don't. Because I've had kids in like my foundations and essentials classes who couldn't handle losing. And so we would have to find a game where not there wasn't always just one winner.
Right.
So would that be part of definition? Like deciding if
Sure.
you're gonna have a winner or not?
Yeah, absolutely. Because if it that can be part of does a game have a winner? So it's part of defining what a game is. And then we can compare different types of games, so that also, I mean, they all tie together, and then, that's relationship. What's the effect of playing the game and having a winner? And what's the cause of that? Whether we do or don't have a winner. Anything else that you think of would be a good starting? It doesn't have to just be definition, but we've talked so a little bit about what is a game, and then we can compare that. If the students are new to creating a game, where can they get something to compare of what a game is?
Just think
The
about other
backs of the
games.
math map books.
They can, yes. They can go back to the math mat books and see what those other games were, right? Other activities on the back covers. They can go to their game closet. It doesn't have to be a math game. They can pull out all kinds of games and look at what happens in a game. in a game, one of the things that was mentioned in our call earlier, the brainstorming call for this, was that taking turns is a big part of a game. You know, if you just practice that, in doing that, just ordering makes any game mathematical, right?
I
Taking
want
turns. How long
to
did it take?
I want to add that encourage your kids to already do that with the games they play too. So, for example, with playing with a 10-year-old grandchild and a 5-year-old grandchild, Trouble is a really typical 4-year-old game, but it's the most frustrating game in the world because you can never win. And so they make up different numbers mean different things in order to give different people a chance to win. So just when we do that, with Parcheesi, you can go one way or the other way, or you can, any kind of game that they already are playing board games with. You can play checkers playing 3 or 4 versions of it. So that might be what they do instead of making up their own game on that board that year. They might tell a family game and draw it out that they've already adapted.
Mhm.
Yes, I agree that starting with that blank page can be a lot, and to adapt something that you already enjoy might be a great to start with that adaptation, but then even comparing, okay, I enjoy checkers, I enjoy shoots and ladders, I enjoy different things, and what you might find is you enjoy a game with lots of pieces that you don't lose immediately when you when you can lose a little bit here and sacrifice a player there and still play for a while. You might find that you like a game with a board. You might find that you like card games. You might find that you do have different ages and that you're comfortable having different things happening to keep it enjoyable for everyone. That like Lee was saying, that the 10-year-old and the 5-year-old have different needs in the game. And so if it's not overly competitive, but still competitive enough, they're willing to, like for me, my dad, if I ever wrestled with my dad, he got on his knees when I was really little. So he wasn't huge and towering over me. The rules were dad has to be on his knees, so that we're more level. So things like that we can do to give each other a little bit of a even playing field. What other things, what else can you think of just from classical tools that would help us encourage our students that they can invent a game?
So I'm not sure if this would be comparison or which it would be, but I just had this idea. What if people wrote the names of games they like to play on strips of paper, and then they had to draw 2 and combine them, or
That's
draw 3
great.
and combine them?
Yeah, I really like that. And that's a great way for them to have to manipulate something they're already familiar with. Yeah.
I was also thinking, circumstance. Is the circumstance, are we inside and on a table, or are we outside in a big yard and doing, the circumstance for the game is, can we adapt that to, to different locations?
Yes. And that gives us the freedom too to then say, well, my child really would rather be throwing a ball or kicking something or collecting things outdoors instead of sitting at a table. So maybe if we have children who enjoy more large motor skill games, then we know that. And that's part of circumstance too.
I like that, Kristen, because so I love Connect Four, but it's hard to play Connect Four with a big group because there's only two. So I bought this, it's an off brand, but it's a giant Connect Four off of Amazon. And so a bunch of people can play. You can have teams, but it's big enough where you could play outside or, whatever. And then same thing with like Jenga. Like Jenga is small because it has little blocks, but they have a giant Jenga. Again, I got an off brand from Amazon. And so we can play anywhere. We can take it in the car or whatever. And I love games like that you can kind of take, and modify. So I love that idea of just thinking about the circumstance. Like, can I play this game inside, or can I play it both inside and outside? Or do I have to make changes in order to, move locations?
Yeah, exactly. Those are you can take any game, and if you like it, you can find a way. And sometimes it's talking with other people, saying, I would really like to use this here. And people will be quick to share ideas. And then we find too that, like I know Babs loves the flashcards. So she can turn any game into flashcard practice. Somebody else might really, their child might need lots of addition practice or subtraction or multiplication or division or mental math or shapes. Whatever it is that we know they need to practice, we can really turn any game into review and into
Mhm.
practicing that. If it's checkers, you could have that they can only actually collect that jump if they can answer a fact. You know, we can do anything like that, and we can. One of the things that Kirsty mentioned earlier too, with young children, any activity that they have a goal, like Kristen was saying about having a goal, is it can be a game. So if we're saying line your trucks up largest to smallest, that can be a game. We can call it the lining up game or the ordering game. You know, and they could measure line up measuring cups and measuring spoons and trucks and dolls and blocks, anything. So with our younger children, my parents loved to play the quiet game with me, which, you know, was their goal was me being quiet when I was
I
little.
love that.
And so, um, you know, we can, and then at some point you realize you're gonna lose. So just go ahead and lose right away and say, I lost. Okay, the game's over. So they figure those things out after a while. But any goal-oriented thing, we can call it a game. We can give them fun names. We can help the kids do that. And then we won't be surprised when they do the same with us. And they say, no, I'm playing the, you know, sneak the extra Oreo game. Any other thoughts or ideas?
So Jill, one of the when you said that about lining up cars, right, making that into a game for our younger students, if you have students, one, right, learning how to lose graciously is important. So that is a good thing to help our children to learn to lose graciously, right? And to play by the rules, to do things in the proper order. Right. If we one element of a game is oftentimes chance, right? So helping them to see that there's an element of chance in a lot of games. Um, but if you have a student, right, and you're thinking in terms of helping them to think about winning and losing without it being personal, right? If I'm lining up all my cars, which car won because it was the largest, right? Or which dump
Yes.
truck could carry the most, right? So you can have, well, how do you think this car feels if it didn't win, right? So you can play,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to be really transparent here. That's because when I play Sudoku, all of the numbers have a personality. It's weird. I don't really understand it, but like for a long time, six was always the first number that I got. Like I play them in order anyway, and six was always the first one to sort out. And then like five would get jealous. And now it's like, and there was always this like tension between them. But now they're like friends and they're like happy when the other one. So I don't really understand why my brain works that way. But right, for our kids, they may have this similar kind of a way of dealing with things with their dolls or their toys that help them to explore those feelings without actually having to feel them themselves.
That's a really good idea because there's lots of things that we do prepare our children for and we practice. We might practice greeting someone, shaking hands, saying hello, doing our phone number, but we don't necessarily practice losing graciously or congratulating the winner. And so making that part of the plan, equipping them instead of just fussing at them for not being gracious. But we'd even do it with Christmas presents. You know, if you know that they're going to a gift exchange, we practice. What if you don't like it? That's not what you say. What do you say? So, but practicing that, and I think team sports probably do that some. They practice how to be gracious to the other team, but sometimes at home, you let your hair down and you just let the family see all of your feelings. So yes, I agree, letting the trucks or letting the numbers have working through what they might feel like. My sons would play Monopoly with many characters. They would use characters from books or movies or just make up names, and they would play as multiple people, and that sometimes did the same thing. They would wind up laughing over the different characters and wound up giving those characters personalities. So the whole point of this book, though, is really not about coming up with an amazing game that you're going to sell on Amazon. The point of this is letting them learn how they can do what looks like a blank page and something they've never had to do before. And it's really, again, reminding us how we start anything, how we start with a math equation, how we start with a paper, how we start with a task that we've been asked to do and we've never done it before. And so we can say, what do I know about this kind of thing? Where do I start? What things do I need? And then once they've done it, they can play it and see, did it work? Did this game work? Is it something I could share with friends or other family members? I mean, there's a couple games on Amazon that they say were invented by kids. Those kids, they practiced on somebody and they had to work through these kinds of things. So who knows, maybe our kids will develop something that more people can enjoy. But either way, just going back to the restfulness of the classical model of the 5 common topics, the 5 core habits, a little bit of the 5 canons of rhetoric also. And then looking and really comparison is often very helpful. We can compare to what do other game instructions look like? What do other game boards and pieces look like? What games do we already enjoy or not enjoy that we know that we are going to include or avoid? So, Kirsty, Babs, Kristen, sorry, Jana, Lee, anybody who has anything else to add, that's really all I have to share and encourage everyone in this activity.
I also think that, our children can tend to be creative in themselves. When I was, first starting out, my kids were 4 and 2, and we had the teddy bear counters and the little square, things. They naturally wanted to like make a game. So we did our math little lesson, but then they stayed there and played with the teddy bears and made little houses for them, and they naturally made their own game and took, every single manipulative out and made the dominoes be like walls around the teddy bears. And, it was just, they were just making their own game. So sometimes, we just need to let them do that sometimes, I think.
I think that's a great point, Kristen, that a lot of the times the kids are going to create, especially with our younger ones. I think with our older students, right? How do we push our older students? Maybe bringing in more of that probability, right? Jan, I think about your son, that maybe we want them to assess the probability and how do you bring strategy in versus pure chance, right? Our older students, we can challenge them to consider those aspects of a game. We can challenge our older students to be very clear in how they've written their instructions down. Whereas our younger students, they might be sort of games, but more activities where we help them, right? Well, how would you tell somebody else? And maybe we write down and we're helping them to order their thoughts to build on their creativity, right? So there's a more apparent involvement. And I also had the thought that this is a great opportunity to really integrate all of your strands together because you could say, well, what's something right? This is lesson 29. So this is a reflective book. You could go and look in your book. What's something you included in your book that might be an idea for a game? What's a history sentence you remember that you really enjoyed? Could that give us a good story for a game? Right? Or the timeline cards, or something from science, right? Was there a science experiment that we could make into a game, right? Right. So I don't know why the one that popped into my mind was, where you use the magnet and then you put the shavings and then do they still do that one in foundations and you see, right? And so you get sort of those marks of the magnetic field. And well, you could make a fun game of like having to move around the magnetic field or something. So when we think of this idea of invention, right, that of comparison and circumstance, and we're pulling these ideas to help our kids, there's a whole host of things that we've done in our academic year that we can pull from as as ideas, right? So how could you take the history sentence about Genghis, or the timeline, about Genghis Khan, pick a couple of timeline cards, right? Could you make a game out of that? What's a story that could turn into a game? So there's a lot of different ways we can pull that together. And for our youngest ones, even just simple games, but helping them to think through how would you, I think about Lee and her peanut butter sandwich, right? With when we're talking about science fair. So how do you explain the game of a coin toss to somebody, right? That's a really simple game. So with our younger ones, maybe instead of just creating a game, some of them, I mean, my kids were always making games, right? They love to make game boards, and then we would have to sit and play them. They'd be like, "Can we play our game?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, sure." The game that doesn't really work, but we'll play it, right? So we've all done that with our kids. Um, so there's that aspect of their creativity, but then if we're also trying to give them some guidance in how, right? Saying, okay, well, sometimes when we want to figure things out, sometimes we toss a coin to see who's going to go first. How would you explain that to somebody, right? How would you write those instructions? So picking something very simple that they're maybe familiar with and using that as a way to help them think through what is right, what is the order, right? So when we think about like relationship, who goes first? What's the order of the game, right? How do you choose who picks heads or tails? How do you choose who flips it? Right? Those are questions that we could help them to think through, that even a very simple game needs to have some order that we could help them to determine. So I think this is a really, there's one spot for one game here, but I think that there's a lot of ways that a family could take this, right? You could develop one collaboratively, or let each one develop their own. I think there's a lot of things that you could do here to help students, to grow. So all right, well, thanks, Jill. Thanks everybody for, I think this was a really fun way to kind of capstone for us, right? As we played all these games and thought about this, to think about how would we guide our students in creating their own game. And then Babs gets our final activity of the year. And so I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, so I remember volunteering for this one thinking this is going to be super easy. And then I realized I had not done Spirograph in so many years. I was having trouble actually getting it to work. So a couple of things I wanted to kind of talk through. One is there are no instructions. And so really this is just a fun game. Now there's lots of things you can learn, but it is just a fun game. And there are places that tell you that you can make your own. However, I did attempt and I could not. So I don't know what that means. If that means it's not possible, or it just means I can't do it. I don't know. But they had get a roll of masking tape and the lid of a soda and punch holes in it. And it just made a circle. I don't know what I was doing wrong. And so I was thankful I found this one at Walmart. It was only $5. And so I would, if people were like, "Oh, well, I don't want to have to buy something," you can try to make it, but I felt like it was worth $5 because this is a little travel set. I mean, there are some expensive ones, but really all you need is one little frame and then one or two circles that you can move around. And so I really liked this little game, this little one from Walmart. And so, Kirsty, I think this one has a little video. I think this one has a video where you can play and it'll kind of show you how to maneuver it. The one in the middle is a video, I think. And so this is just me doing it. And you're going to see errors because this was the very first time I took it out of the box thinking, okay, I'm going to show them exactly how to do it if you haven't done it in a while. And so we'll just kind of watch and see if it'll
It is
play.
not letting me play. It says cannot play media, I'm afraid.
Oh, no. Okay, well, I wonder if I could play it on mine. So do you think it would let me share?
Yeah.
All right, let's see if I could share. Let's see, it might ask for permission.
Let me stop sharing and then it should let you share.
All right, let's see. All right, I think I can share the PowerPoint. Let's see if it'll let me do that. Okay, so let's see if it'll let me play it here. All right, you guys see it moving?
Yes.
Okay. So really it's just you have this circle, you find what you can choose whatever dot you want, and then you just move around. Now, what I felt was challenging is you have to hold the frame because it will move. And you also kind of have to hold that circle really tightly because it has to go around the edge. So that was kind of difficult. So I don't necessarily know this. I mean, I want to say it had like 5 years old and up, but I'm not sure if I was 5 if I could have done that. So I don't know about that. But so I mean, logically, it's pretty simplistic. You're just putting that on there and you're moving it around. So that's the first one. And then they had another little one in here. And so I'll play this one for you while I'm talking. This one was a smaller circle, and I chose to do different colors. So once I had my pattern that I liked with red, then I chose a different color. And so you'll just get to see, it does kind of look like one of the ones on the back of our math map booklet, but you're just going around in a circle. And so, like I said, it is kind of challenging to keep it steady, keep the frame steady, and then also keep that circle steady because you have to, keep going on the outside. One thing I did notice is it came with colored pencils, but my tips kept breaking, and maybe I'm just heavy-handed. So I don't know if it would be better just to have a regular pencil or maybe a fine tip marker or something like that. But I noticed on, I want to say the purple one and the yellow one, the tip came off and stayed in the little circle. So again, I don't know if I was just really heavy-handed or maybe they weren't a good quality, colored pencils, but that's what I did for that one. So that's physically if you want to do the Spirograph. And then I found some websites that actually let you do it on the computer. Honestly, this one was super fun to me and actually a lot easier than physically doing it. And so I'll play this one for you while I'm talking. So you pick a color that you like, and then you choose your circle, and you take your mouse, and then you go around the circle, and it creates your design. And then you pick another color, and you choose a different circle, and then you make that design. And so you can keep doing this, until you have a beautiful picture that you love. And so, like I said, maybe it's just a fine motor skill thing. I don't know, but it was so much easier to use the mouse because I didn't have to press down hard. All I had to do was move it in a circle, and it created it for me. So I really enjoyed that part. And then there at the top, it has a little box where you can just take the gears away, and you get to see the pretty picture. And then you can erase it and start all over. So I really enjoyed that one. And then for some of our older students, I found this one. I actually enjoyed this one too. The pictures weren't as pretty, but it has a lot of calculation down here at the bottom. You can manipulate the numbers, and I actually didn't. I had never heard of some of these terms before, and so I kind of took a screenshot of them because I thought they were interesting. So I don't know if I'm going to say this right. It was hypotrochoid and epitrochoid, but really it's just talking about the inside of the circle and the outside of the circle, but they have measurements attached to it. And so you can change those measurements, and then you click on the word draw and it draws it for you. And then you can go change them again, and I just made up numbers, so I wasn't trying to make anything in particular, but I just changed numbers up and then drew again, and then it would make a new shape. And so I thought, for our older students, maybe, talking through, well, if I made that number larger or smaller, what kind of shape would I have? And that kind of thing, and just let them kind of play around with them. There were a couple of websites that talked about specific formulas that are creating this. So that might be something if you want to go a little bit deeper. But I mean, honestly, I think the point of doing this game is really just for fun because it is week 30 and we're celebrating the end. But it was very interesting and how far you could go, talking about the math. So those are two sites that I found. There are lots of sites out there, but I really liked this one where you could plug in numbers, because just to kind of see kind of cause and effect, what would happen if I made this number smaller or larger. So some adaptations. So I felt like for the younger students, maybe mom would want to do some, or after mom created it, let them color it or something. I wasn't 100% sure that 5 and 6 year olds would be completely successful. Obviously, the more you practice, the easier it'll get. But it does take a lot of fine motor skills. So if they're struggling in that area, you might want to be the mom or dad might be want to be the ones that actually create it first, maybe even showing them, and then maybe at least being there to help, because it did seem like it was a little bit of a struggle if you had fine motor skills. And then, like I said, for the older ones, maybe predicting what will happen if I choose a different circle as I'm going around, or if I am using that website where I can change my numbers. So overall, like I said, I think it's just supposed to be a fun game, but there are lots of things, that you can think through. I think looking at the patterns and how beautifully, like, it looks like they're 3D circles, even though all we did was just take our pen and move a circle around in this little frame, made this beautiful 3D image. And so, kind of talking through that. Um, what kind of things do you guys think, as far as not necessarily just adaptations, but maybe things that you can think about to change the way I did it, or just some things that maybe would make it more mathematical, or anything you can think of? What suggestions do you guys have?
I don't know that it's a suggestion, but I was just wondering, like, what's like why a spirograph as a game, as an activity? Like, what's the purpose of it? Is it all those numbers on that last? I mean, I never knew that there was all. I mean, I'm sure that there is mathematics behind it, but that was cool to see that one website that had all the numbers and how it changed and affected it.
Well, I asked Kirsty that same question, and I think it's really just for fun. I don't really think there was a main reason, but Kirsty can speak if she wants to talk more about that.
Well, I think Lee chose it because she remembered using a spirograph, and it was fun, right? That probably a lot of us had a spirograph at some point, and it was fun to do with our kids, and or fun to do as kids. And so now it's an opportunity to introduce that to our children. But it is looking at all those different curves, right? If you go back to lesson 13, where we talk about the polar graphs, that's essentially what we're creating here, are those polar graphs, where we see that. And so if it's an opportunity to explore some of those things, if we want to, we can go as deep as we'd like with our older students. But as Babs pointed out, this is lesson 30. This is our capstone week and a chance to celebrate. And what better way to celebrate than by creating our own version of mathematical beauty? It's a way to remember that our goal is not just to learn math, but to discover truth, beauty, and goodness. To describe, right? We're looking for the unseen. And so as we're looking for truth and for beauty and for goodness, this is a great way for our students to be able to create their own beauty with patterns, order, curves. There's that idea that you might be moving your pencil in a straight way, right? Some of them will allow you to sort of move a straight, but the shape ends up creating a curve. Or you might end up creating a curve and it makes straight lines. There's different ways that different shapes interact. So there's an opportunity there to look for the truth, the beauty, and the goodness, and to remind students that that's what our goal has been all year. The math education is a bonus, but not an end in and of itself.
I like how it can give some aha moments to those polar pictures, those polar petals, I guess, that you mentioned. And that reminded me, the spirograph I had when I was a kid did have the ring, but it also had what looked like a ruler, with just the gear on the outside. And it was, I was never successful at getting it around. But that was one of the things that when the sine and cosine, those waves, I did not understand that they were in a circle, that was an exterior spot. It was on the actual circle, not in the area of the circle, and that it was what was rotating on and going around and creating this wave on the line. So I feel like Spirograph ties into some of those aha moments too. If they have a place that they can watch that go, and there's, I mean, online you can see them. So that I agree that this is physically manipulative, that is going to build some some motor skills. But if you do just have fun with it, like you were saying, Babs, knowing that it's not going to be perfect and be willing to share that with them and let them see us not be perfect. I like this activity.
All right. Any other questions about our Spirograph? All right. Well, let me share. Not that one. This one. And there's what Babs has shared with us. And that brings us to our reminder every week of the support that we have. And there's so much. And I know I say it every week, but I really hope that people hear me and tell their friends that Classical Conversations has devoted and committed significant resources to providing support for families that no other curriculum does. That everybody, whether you're in community or not, is welcome to come and join the book club and ask questions every single week of me, of Lee, of Babs, of Jill, of Shauna, that we are here to answer your questions and help you every single week. And that's available live to everybody. Everybody can email us and we can answer those questions live on the book club, or we respond to people. People who are in community have access to the companion. They have access to the forums. They have access to their tutors. And their tutors have additional access to me and to Babs and to Shauna to ask their questions. So there's so much support here. And we really want people to know that that is all included in your membership to CC Connected. And as I mentioned, some of that you don't even have to be in CC yet, right? We hope that if you're here and not yet in CC, that you're going to be so excited by what we're doing that you're going to want to find a community and join us. So every week we want to remind you, and when you're talking with others or sharing on Facebook, please share that there's so much available to everybody at no additional cost, because we really want you to feel empowered to lead mathematics education in your home. This is our final summer book club for 2025. We have made it through those few weeks. Those 15 weeks have gone by awfully quickly. So we are now going to be turning our attention to what this might look like at home. Next week, we will be starting with lesson 1. Lesson 1 is really more aimed at the parent and preparing the parent. So this is going to be a great opportunity to come and tune in and see what it might look like as a parent preparing to lead your students through the math map this year. And then we'll go from there with a booklet a week and talking through what are some strategies for using the math map at home, especially when you may have multiple ages of students around your family table. And that brings us as ever to our question and answer time. So does anybody have any questions they would like to ask this week?
I have a question. Not sure if we can do it in 15 minutes, but I was helping my son with his statistics class and noticed that the normal distribution curve has E and pi in it. Is that like why are those transcendental numbers in the equation. Are you familiar with the equation for the normal distribution?
Yes, and so you mean E and phi? Like
Yes. Well,
yeah.
no. Well, it's y equals e to the negative 1/2, and then it's times the, I don't know. It's a I can upload it into the chat, but anyway, I don't know if if this is beyond our scope of.
Let me pull up my whiteboard because it just is going to be much smoother to write on.
I mean, I've always seen the bell curve. You always hear about the bell curve, that's the thing. And then I never realized until I was looking at it when we were trying to work through this whole statistics program. And I noticed that pi and e were a part of this formula. And
Okay, so you are welcome to share the particular formula that you are thinking of, which you may be doing.
I put it in the chat. Should I put it on the, how do I do it?
No, see it. Yep. So in this case, part of, and I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not sure why they're using X and Y, because that's not, when I did statistics, we usually just did the standard deviations and so forth. But essentially what is happening here is that your normal curve, right? When we're using our normal curve, we are looking at something that has been standardized. And so we're looking at percentages. And so if this is 0 and this is 100%, right? And then we want to know, where does something fall within there? What we're looking at are areas, right? So when we're looking, if I wanted to know the percentile for this point here, for this score here, right? What we're really calculating is the area under the curve. And so part of this is coming from, if I was to be integrating, right? If I was to look at this, if this is my, without going into great detail, right? Because it's a while since I've derived all of these formulas, but in a very big, high level idea, this is where calculus and statistics really integrate, and that you see that we're looking for areas under the curve in order to find, right? So up here, my area would have been 100, way out at this end. At this point, halfway through, that would be my 50th percentile, but my area, I have, right, 50% of my area. And so when I'm looking at this, that's our integral, right, where we go from our 0 to our x, for example. And that's where I would have to go and look at, if this is our formula for our curve, how that's derived, I don't remember. I'm going to be honest with you, because it's a long time since I did calculus-based statistics.
And I understand. I just found it interesting that we are gonna, once we get the challenge 4 books, we're gonna be talking about the transcendental numbers, and that E and pi are both in this formula. And I didn't realize that statistics incorporated those numbers, and I was just wondering why they're in there. If, like, why is E in there and why is pi in there? I get the standard deviation. I mean, I get, there's a mean and the standard deviation, but I just thought it was interesting that pi and E were in there.
It's because, well, they're significant numbers because they pop up everywhere, right? So it's not, nobody decided this, right? But it's actually, when they derive these things, these numbers pop up, which is what makes them so interesting. Now, there's a whole lot more transcendental numbers that we don't name, that don't pop everywhere, but Euler's number E, right, there you go. So our Euler identity. I mean, isn't that weird? Like, who even thinks e to the I pi plus 1 is 0? But, right, that's how you know that Euler is got a mind that is just so far beyond, or God chose to work through him and reveal things to him that he certainly hasn't revealed to me. But those numbers, they're significant numbers because they really do pop up in all of these different places. That pi is defined as the ratio between the circumference and the diameter, but we see pi popping up in all of these different places. E pops up in all of these different places. Phi, where it pops up in all of these different places. So yes, I'm not going to sit here and pretend to remember how to derive that. I can do that if you would like me to, but I think it's just a great thing to recognize that these numbers truly do show up in all of these different places. And to me, that's just one more evidence of a creator that, wow, when we look at the standardized distribution and we look at how this works, that these numbers would pop up in there is sort of bizarre.
That's why it's because of all of our conversations and, just knowing that transcendentals is eventually going to come to challenge 4. But I just thought it was interesting. I never knew that there would be that, those numbers involved with this whole, normal distribution is just what we do. But anyway, thank you. I just saw it and it was just interesting to me. Appreciate it.
Any other questions? Hopefully one that I can answer more completely. Well, if not, have a wonderful week. Remember that even though we are going to start our back to school book club next week, hopefully you are not back to school quite yet. So enjoy these last few days of summer, play games, learn through experiences, enjoy the time with your children where you can be primarily parent and a little less teacher. And I remember when somebody said something about, how few summers you have with your children, which is a little bit depressing, but it also helps to remind you just how precious those days are. So enjoy this time, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week when we launch into Ex Nihilo.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Blessings, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.